The call came on a rainy Tuesday. My sister, Serena, her voice a fragile thread of static on the line. Evan. It's back. The cancer. It's terminal this time. The words dropped into my stomach like stones. 2 years before, she'd beaten stage to breast cancer. We'd celebrated, we cried, we believed in miracles. Now this. A recurrence that had spread, she said, defiant and swift. The doctors gave her 6 months, maybe a year with aggressive, palliative care. Our father, a stoic, wealthy man whose love was expressed in trusts and dividends, was absolutely devastated. I was completely wrecked. She was my only sibling. The treatment began almost immediately. Serena, who had always been so vibrant, so full of life, became a spectre. She lost weight dramatically, shaved her head preemptively, and moved back into the family estate so Dad and the nurses could care for her. I visited constantly. Every time I saw her, she was hooked to an Vapol she claimed was delivering brutal chemo. She'd be wrapped in blankets, her skin pale and waxy. She'd clutch my hand, her eyes full of a haunting, poetic sadness. I just want to make things right, Evan, she'd whisper. Tie up loose ends, for Dad, for you. Those loose ends were, of course, financial. She needed to simplify her affairs, she said. She wanted to access her inheritance from our mother's trust early, to cover experimental treatments that weren't covered by insurance. Dad, completely blinded by his grief, agreed without a second thought. The lawyers came. The trustees were persuaded. A 7-figure sum was released into her control. I didn't question it. I mean, what kind of monster questions a dying sister's last wishes? But as I soon learned, monsters can wear hospital gowns. The first crack in her story was a smell. On one of my visits, I leaned in to hug her and I caught a scent underneath the hospital antiseptic smell. It wasn't sickness. It was coconut suntan oil. For February, it was sod. I mentioned she must have a new lotion. She just waved a weak hand and said, "It's the nurses." For my dry skin. I let it go. The second crack was a pill. She accidentally dropped her daily medication organizer, and dozens of pills scattered all over the Persian rug. As I bent down to help her gather them, I saw what they were. They weren't the potent chemotherapies I'd researched online. They were vitamins, supplements, generic pain relievers. She snatched the organizer back from me, her feigned fragility replaced by a flash of genuine panic. My real meds are in the fridge, she stammered. These are just for the symptoms. The third, and fatal, crack was a digital ghost. I was at the house helping Dad set up a new printer, and I needed a document from the family cloud drive. As I was searching, I stumbled into a folder that wasn't fully hidden. It was labeled S_proj. Inside weren't medical files, but PDFs. One was a theatrical makeup guide for creating the appearance of cachexia that is the wasting syndrome people get with severe illness. Another was a medical billing template for fictional oncology services. And the last one was a screenshot of a real estate listing for a luxury villa in Costa Rica, dated for a closing next month. The buyer was an LLC with a name that made my blood run cold, Siren Escall Holdings.Siren.Serena. Suddenly, all the pieces assembled themselves into a monstrous, perfect picture. The weight loss was from crash dieting, maybe diuretics. The pale skin was just makeup. The fourth was nothing but Celine. The cancer was a prop. The inheritance wasn't for treatment. It was for escape. It was for a new life, funded by our father's grief and my shattered heart. The rage I felt was a silent, white-hot explosion. But I didn't confront her. A confrontation would just lead to tears, denial, more lies. She'd de-spin some sob story about bucket list planning or having a mental breakdown. No, I needed evidence. Evidence so undeniable, so public, that her entire performance would collapse under its own weight. So I became the devoted, grieving brother. I leaned into her lie completely. I started researching experimental clinics and found one in Switzerland, famous for its privacy and exorbitant, cash-only fees. Serena, I said, with tears welling up in my eyes, I found a place. They have a trial. It's a Hail Mary, but we have to try. I showed her the glossy, fake website I'd paid a designer to create in 48 hours. The Leckler Institute, it promised radical, personalized immunotherapy. And the cost. It was exactly the remainder of her inheritance. Her eyes, for the first time, showed not performative hope, but real, greedy calculation. A Swiss clinic would be the perfect cover. It would get her out of the country, legitimize the spending, and provide a serene, private place for her to die before she was resurrected in Costa Rica. She agreed instantly. The clinic, I explained, requires a final, comprehensive in-person evaluation by their lead diagnostician before accepting a patient. They're sending Drive. Valerian. He's the best in the world. He'll be here next Tuesday. She was thrilled. The trap was set, Doctor. Valerian was actually an actor, a friend of a friend, who I paid handsomely for his imposing demeanor and his ability to spout medical jargon. He arrived at the estate with a crisp leather bag. We ushered Dad out of the room, telling him it would be too emotional to observe. I stayed, playing the role of the concerned brother. The doctor conducted a solemn, thorough examination. He listened to her heart, examined her port, which was a very convincing prosthetic, and reviewed her falsified medical history. Then he said the line I'd written for him, Ms. Thorne, for this protocol, we must be absolutely certain of the metastasis. We need a fresh, real-time biopsy, analyzed in my mobile lab. It's a minor procedure. We'll numb the area. It's crucial. Serena's performance faltered for the first time. A real biopsy would reveal no cancer. I'm so fatigued, she stammered. The last one was so painful. I understand, the doctor said soothingly. But without this, Leckler cannot proceed. Your brother has secured the funds. This is the final step. I could see the war raging behind her eyes, the villa in Costa Rica versus the risk of being exposed. Greed won. She agreed. In a perfectly rehearsed motion, the doctor prepared a local anesthetic. As he swabbed her arm, I accidentally bumped the four-pole. The bag of saline swung precariously. On pure instinct, Serena's hand, the one that wasn't pretending to be weak, shot out with startling speed and strength to catch it, stabilizing the pole perfectly. A woman supposedly too frail for a tiny needle biopsy had the reflexes of a tennis pro. The doctor and I froze. We both looked at her strong, steady hand gripping the pole. Then we looked at her face. The carefully constructed mask of agony had slipped, replaced by pure, startled defiance. The entire atmosphere in the room changed. I didn't smile. I just reached over and gently wiped the back of her hand with my thumb. The pale, waxy makeup came right off, revealing healthy, tan skin underneath. The tan from a Costa Rican sunbed, paid for by our father's tears. Game's over, Serena, I said, my voice quiet and final. The Leckler Institute doesn't exist. Doctor. Valerian is an actor. And your inheritance has just been frozen by the trustees, pending an investigation into fraud and elder abuse. The color that flooded her face was real. The rage that twisted her features was not part of any script. She screamed then, not in pain, but in thwarted fury. A torrent of curses that confirmed every single suspicion I had. I had recorded the entire examination with a hidden camera. The footage of her swift reflex, the makeup smearing away, and her subsequent meltdown was all the proof I needed. I played it for our father. He watched it, crumbling from grief into a deeper, more profound heartbreak. And then, that heartbreak hardened into a granite-like anger I had never seen in him before. The police were involved for fraud. The trustees sued to recover every single cent. The villa purchase in Costa Rica fell through. Serena was left with nothing but the consequences of her own spectacular lie. My sister's cancer was a lie to get the inheritance early. So I prescribed her a taste of her own medicine, a fictional cure that led to a very real collapse. I didn't expose her with an accusation. I scripted her downfall, handed her the lines, and watched as her own greed directed the final, tragic scene. Her performance didn't end with a peaceful death. It ended in handcuffs and total disgrace. And in our family, that is the terminal diagnosis. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've ever dealt with a situation this unbelievable, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more.